Welcome to the 2020 DC Black Film Festival. We really appreciate your support. Check out dcbff.org for more information about the festival and this year's lineup of films and events. You just watched the come up. Now we're going to find out a little bit more about the filmmakers behind the films you just saw. I'm Nick Manning, creator of Black Girls Do Stuff 2 and co-host of the Black Girls Do Stuff 2 podcast.
And I'm Tiffani, and I'm also creator of Black Girls Do Stuff 2, as well as a co-host on the podcast.
And we'd like to introduce you to our panelists briefly before we get into our Q&A today. So we have Chad Hamilton, director of Walking Home, a Survival Guide. The wave.
How you doing?
Hi. And then we have Alexia Colette, director of Kokokids of Paris.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, so we'll jump right into the questions. We'll actually let Tiffani take over.
Okay. One of the questions I did want to ask for both of you, as short film directors, creators, how are you able to squeeze so much story and emotion into such a short amount of time? Like Chad, your film was 4 minutes, and it made me cry. 4 minutes made me cry. And Kokokids of Paris, I loved watching just 15 minutes of two kids running through a city and their experience was very similar to something I would imagine two kids running through a city in America would have. But how are you able to squeeze so much emotion and so much story into such a short amount of time? What is your process in picking and choosing what to show and what not to show for either one of you?
Coco, would you like to go first?
Okay, why not? I would say that there is a lot of emotion in this movie thanks to the two amazing kid actresses.
Mm-hmm.
There are two cute little girls with a strong personality in real life. So I think it brings a lot on screen. And there were non-professional. Just Shaya, the oldest one, had some small experience as an extra. And because they have these strong and great personalities in real life, I try to have them play in improvisation. So I think this emotion come from them first. They are the two actresses and they are two great kids in real life, and I think that's why you feel this emotion, and I'm happy that you feel emotion watching this movie. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chad?
For myself, it was just pretty much making sure everything was intentional. So just making sure every little bit, every little scene had purpose, had a meaning. Because like I said, I only had 4 minutes to work with. So I had to do a good job of not only pacing, but also making sure that the information that I wanted was coming across to the audience and everything. And it's a relatable topic, unfortunately.
It's very timely.
Yeah, I mean, I made that before the what we're going through right now, but this was just stuff that I grew up with, and as long as I felt that as long as it was relatable, as long as I knew that there was things that these are things that I was taught growing up, and it had to have been across the board that someone else would feel these things as well. So yeah, just intention and just relatability.
Okay.
So that was a great segue into my question, which is actually for you, Chad. It was the shortest of the three and very impactful. I also got emotional watching. But my specific question, I guess it's two parts. One, there was a scene where he's in the convenience store and he picks an Arizona iced tea, and you talk about intention. Was that intentional? And then the the 3 rules that you focused on, why those? Because obviously there's at least 32 and there could be more. So why those 3 for this particular film?
Yeah, I mean, there could be 100 rules. I mean, but no, like that was absolutely intentional. The iced tea, the hoodie, you know, like I I wanted to ground this, you know, and like these were, you know, hopefully I wanted people to kind of like, you know, see that, okay, that unfortunately sometimes even unfortunately when we do follow the rules and things happen, and that's why it's called what it's called. It is a survival guide, because you know some would argue that we exist in a very very hostile territory, you know. And yeah, so that's what I was thinking. That's what I was going for with that. And what was the rest of the question?
Sorry, why those 3 rules?
Those 3. Part of it was a production thing. You know, those were the things that I was able to kind of fit together in, you know, within the space of walking home. And production wise, it was easy to get from, I had access to this location, I had access to this location, I could weave this through in a narrative and it could flow, you know, smoother. Yeah, there were a couple that we actually had to, there were a couple things that we kind of had to cut because the footage wasn't working together. But those were the ones that I think stood out most to me as you know, every day, that some like just walking home, just period, that anybody could relate to.
Well, I'm so glad that you gave us number 1 and he actually made it. So.
Yeah, that was also intentional because I mean, I made this as part of a class assignment, and some of my fellow my black classmates were like, well, there's an option that you can kind of go with if you want to make sure, I mean, if you know, towards the end, where you can have it just be a father waiting at home and the son never gets home. And I said no. Like, the reason why I made sure that in my story, my character made it home, because I also think that, unfortunately, within our media, we're kind of getting very numb to Black violence, you know, and I did not want my character to be, you know, another victim. I wanted my character to win. I wanted this to, you know, this, I mean, granted, it's going to be, this is another day in his life, but I wanted this day for him to make it home.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. And then the next question we have is for Alexia. One of the things that I noticed in your movie is there seemed to be a lot of emphasis on the clothing that the 2 girls were wearing. And one particular part that really stood out to me were when Chaya, on her front of her shirt, she has these bright sequins, this bright sequins design. And even at one point, it shines or it sparkles on Luann's face. And Luann takes that cue and she moves her overalls, and then she looks at her shirt and you see that she also has sequins on hers, as well as the other parts in the movie where it flashes to more traditional clothing and then back to their regular street clothing. I wanted to know what was the intention behind that? Like, what was your reasoning?
I wanted to put poetry in this movie, and what I wanted to highlight about these migrant kids is that they were, first of all, kids with their imagination. And I think myself, I'm still a kid, and just, you know, there was a lot of improvisation on this short, and I saw this reflection with the t-shirt, and I thought it could mean a lot about all the lights in this story because basically it's a story of Shaya, the oldest one, the migrant kid, which will help the youngest one who potentially is living in a car with her mom, but we are not really sure about her living situation. And I wanted, the message I wanted to share here is that migrants have a lot to bring to our societies. And I think it's symbolism of this light, of this dance, of this child imagination. Also, when you see the two kids dancing, at some point, Shaya is dressed as a Native American. I know that it's a very different perspective from my French perspective. I don't want to this to be misinterpreted, but it's just that I saw Shaya as a guide for Luan, and Luan overcome her shyness and she become a woodpecker. It is also a strong symbol in the native culture. And
Okay.
for me, it was all about the Coco kid, because Coco in Congolese dialect, it means knock knock. And I wanted this kid to grab our attention, this kid in the street living as homeless kids in Paris and becoming more and more in the, being more and more, I don't know, sorry. What I wanted to say is that there are more and more migrant kids in Parisian streets, but they are invisible, and I really wanted this kid to grab our attention and to be Coco kids, like knocking to our mind to rethink our society. That was, so it's a lot of, as an artist, I had a lot of ideas and I mixed everything, and at the end, this is it. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my next question is for both of you, Chad and Alexia. We noticed that kids were central to the plot of both of your stories. Was there a specific reason you chose to go with storytelling with kids at the center?
Please go ahead.
For myself, yeah, it's because it hits so much harder for me when you realize that in a lot of ways we are having to almost be robbed of our childhood a little bit because of, we have to think on how to navigate just, every day, and just not being shot, walking down the street. So yeah, it's a little bit heartbreaking, but it's real, and that's kind of why I wanted to focus on that.
There are two main reasons. So the first one, but I might repeat what I said earlier, is that migrants or migrant kids, they are first of all kids. And I really wanted to direct this movie about migrants without revealing at the beginning that they were migrants, because I wanted to avoid any bias about migrants, and I wanted first the audience to get attached to these adorable kids, and then once they are attached, to see that they are also facing a very harsh situation, living situation. And I think through kids, you can really relate, especially when you are parents, and you can really think about what it is to be migrants with kids in the Parisian streets. And the second reason, I think that it's a really it's a theme that is so interesting for me. I think I'm still a kid sometimes, and yeah, it's so interesting in life. You are kids and a teenage. The teenage time is also amazing. All this transformation. So I think it's also simply a theme that I like to explore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And then our next question had to deal with the titles, but Alexia, you already answered that earlier. So I'll go ask Chad this question. Both of the movies have very interesting titles, but Chad, what was your intention behind the title for your movie?
Yeah, the title was, I was mulling back on that for a while, and I was worried that it would be too on the nose, but at the end of the day, I was like, no, this is what it is. And, you know, I would have these conversations with my father, and when you think about it, yeah, these are rules to keep me alive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so just again, just a simple fact is just walking home. I need to survive. I need these rules to survive walking home.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was going through my mind while I was trying to think of what to call it.
Okay.
I can't wait to watch your movie, Chad.
Same for you.
Yeah, thank
They're
you.
both really good. You'll enjoy them.
Okay, Alexia, in the movie, one of my favorite parts is where you have the Afrobeats music as well as the garments, and you alluded to the Native American influences. So how did you get the inspiration or come up with the process to put that into the storyline?
This is personally as a kind of music I love to hear. And I think it's really cool and positive and energetic music. And I wanted these two kids to be really cool, to you know. So I said, yeah, let's have these 2, 6, and 8 years old kid listening this kind of badass Afrobeat music, and this is it.
Okay. One more question I did have for Alexia. At the end of the movie, there was an emphasis on the beads that Chaya and Luann were playing with in the tent. At the end of the movie, they were just kind of on the ground and scuffed. And that's where the movie ended. I was wondering, like, it really made me interested to understand, like, what happened to them. It made me scared a little bit. So what was the thought process behind that, or the meaning in the beads or the necklace?
Yeah, I understand your question, and I think it can be hard concerning the two characters. I don't want to. I didn't want the audience to be afraid or about the characters, but it was a way for me to transition to reality.
Okay.
Because the last image, it's a real camp of migrants in Paris, and all this story, it was like a story I wanted to tell, but from my perspective, imagining these kids and their lives, but it's not as happy as it is in my story in life. The stories can be really difficult for families being migrant in France. So I wanted also to remind that it's not so happy ending in real life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap, I want to know, what are the main things that you want audiences to take away from seeing your films?
That's a hard question for me, especially given the climate that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that what I would like for audiences to take away from my film is that what's happening right now is nothing new. It's been happening, and that this is, I mean, this is why we need to fight to stop this, and that, you know, Black Lives Matter, and that, you know, if in order for us as a country to progress, or just in general, we need to actually have this conversation. And I think that's finally starting to happen now, or at least I would hope. But yeah, that's what I would like.
Thank you for that.
To answer your question, I would say that it was, it's really for a French audience. And I should explain that in Paris, there are more and more migrants living in the streets, migrants from Africa living in tents in the streets, often with kids. And it's as if they were invisible. People don't look at them. It's as if, there were only official numbers in the newspapers, and they are sadly ignored. So I made this movie, first of all, to say to people who don't pay attention to them, hey, these people are living in the same city as you, look at them. And I think this was the first message I wanted to address to the audience, but it was really linked to the French context.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, migration is a theme which is now concerning every country. So yeah, we maybe an American audience can find some similarities. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure. And for anyone who wants to connect with you or watch the film, can you tell people where they can find your films?
Yeah, you can find, I have some films up on YouTube at, you can connect through me on Twitter at Global Nomad 22, and my Instagram at Chad B. Hamilton. And yeah, you should be able to find a link through there.
Great, thank you.
Kokokids, it's a very indie movie, so we don't really have any website, but I'd be more than happy to connect with you on Facebook. We have a page which is /Kokokids of Paris, and this is the same for Instagram, and this is it.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Chad and Alexia, for being a part of the panel. It was great. Remember that you can always go to dcbff.org for more details about the festival and this year's lineup of films and events. If you'd like to ask specific questions about the films you just watched, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/DC Black Film Festival and find this Q&A blog so you can interact with our panelists directly. Thank you again for your support and enjoy the rest of the festival.